Imagine you're sitting at a lively dinner party. Around you, people are laughing loudly, passionately discussing the latest Netflix series, celebrity scandals, trending fashion styles, or trivial gossip about mutual acquaintances. Their eyes sparkle with enthusiasm, their faces glow with warmth, and their conversations flow effortlessly, almost like a well-rehearsed play. But you're sitting there quietly, feeling strangely detached, like an outsider who stumbled into the wrong room. You nod politely, forcing a smile as you attempt to blend in, yet a relentless whisper haunts the back of your mind. Doesn't anyone else see how absurd all of this is? They tell you that you should mingle more, socialize better, adapt to the crowd. But deep down you question, what exactly am I sacrificing when I try to fit in? Are you expected to pretend interest in things that bore you? To feign agreement with opinions you quietly reject? Must you suppress your real self, trading authenticity for social acceptance? And what happens if you refuse? Suddenly, you're labeled as distant, cold, awkward, or strange. Society nudges you further toward the edge, subtly suggesting there's something deeply wrong with you. Your honesty feels threatening, your clarity unsettling, your resistance almost offensive. You begin to wonder if being genuinely awake to reality somehow puts you at odds with the rest of the world. Could clarity itself be some sort of psychological defect, and those who fully grasp reality condemned to loneliness? Are authentic people naturally incompatible with society? The problem, of course, runs far deeper than it first appears. The more you dwell on it, the more disturbing it becomes. Why must you suppress your true thoughts and feelings merely to survive socially? Why does your sincerity provoke discomfort in others, causing them to drift away? And why, once you've glimpsed the emptiness behind society's carefully orchestrated facade, does it become impossible to return to the blissful ignorance you once knew? Even more disturbingly, you're forced to wonder, could it be that happiness itself depends on self-deception? Must you trade wisdom for ignorance just to feel that reassuring warmth of belonging? Yet, once you've peeled back the curtain, you can't simply close your eyes and forget. You've seen through the mirage, and there's no turning back. Now, you stand at the brink of a frightening revelation. Your authenticity makes you dangerous, not necessarily to yourself, but to the carefully constructed reality around you. Because when you refuse to conform, when you speak honestly and live openly, you subtly disrupt the comfortable illusions society depends upon. So, here's the unsettling paradox at the heart of your dilemma. The clearer your vision, the more isolated you become. The more authentically you live, the less you can belong. And now, a question gnaws at you, a question too troubling to dismiss, too powerful to ignore. Is it you who has gone wrong, or is there something fundamentally distorted about the society around you? This question isn't rhetorical, nor merely philosophical. It cuts right into the heart of your identity, your sense of self, and your place within the world. It makes you question your sanity, your choices, your entire way of living. Yet, despite the discomfort, you also sense that facing it is necessary, perhaps the most necessary thing you will ever do. Because beneath your uneasy solitude lies a powerful truth. Your feeling of alienation isn't accidental. It's a symptom of a much deeper awakening. The isolation you experience is not random or coincidental. It's your mind pushing you toward a truth that most people choose never to see. You're now at a crossroads. Either you numb yourself back into comfortable illusion, slipping quietly back into the stream of conformity, or you confront this unsettling truth head-on and accept whatever loneliness may come with clarity. And though the path ahead is difficult and uncertain, deep down, you already know you've made your choice. But before you can move forward, you must understand precisely what you're dealing with, the hidden, psychological, and philosophical mechanisms silently shaping your discomfort and isolation. Because the truth beneath your alienation, the truth that your clarity has begun to reveal, is more profound and far darker than you might ever have imagined. Are you ready to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes? To truly understand why you feel perpetually alienated from the crowds around you, we must journey into a deeper, darker part of your mind, a place you've perhaps visited unconsciously but never truly explored. On the surface, it appears simple enough. You've grown apart from the values, conversations, and behaviors around you, creating an uncomfortable gap between your inner world and external reality. But have you ever wondered if this inner discomfort is actually inevitable? Swiss psychologist Carl Jung proposed an intriguing yet unsettling theory called individuation, describing a process in which an individual gradually separates from collective norms to become truly themselves. According to Jung, genuine personal growth is, paradoxically, a journey away from collective consciousness. In other words, the clearer you see the truth about yourself and the world around you, the less easily you fit into societal expectations. Think back to your childhood. Perhaps it was easy then to join groups, play games, and laugh at things you didn't fully understand. As you matured, however, you began to see things more clearly, your authentic likes and dislikes, your values, and what you truly wanted from life. The first moment you felt discomfort because you didn't enjoy the shallow conversations around you, or refused to pretend excitement over something meaningless, marked a critical fracture. From that moment, your psychological world underwent a seismic shift, and you stepped onto Jung's path of individuation, a long, lonely exploration into your true self. But why exactly does this journey toward clarity feel so excruciatingly isolating? To answer this question, you must confront a harsh reality. Modern society is inherently structured against personal awakening. In fact, social stability thrives on conformity and collective consensus, not individual enlightenment. This isn't coincidental. Conformity simplifies management, streamlines consumerism, and keeps power structures intact. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche saw through this clearly. He famously wrote, "Insanity in individuals is something rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule." Society deliberately creates uniform standards, values, and even standardized happiness because this uniformity makes people predictable, manageable, and easier to control. When you begin genuinely questioning those collective truths, Nietzsche argued, you inevitably find yourself standing in opposition to society itself. Philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer took this observation even further, introducing a painfully blunt viewpoint. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. According to Schopenhauer, most people aren't actually pursuing truth or reality. Instead, they spend their lives filling the emptiness with comforting illusions and socially manufactured narratives. The stark reality is too harsh, too terrifying for them to face directly, so they unconsciously prefer the collective illusion, the comforting warmth of group fantasies over the lonely chill of truth. And here is your crucial difference. You, unlike most others, have chosen, perhaps unwittingly, to directly confront reality. The voice deep inside you constantly compels you to question superficial meanings, dismantle carefully constructed social illusions, and ultimately see through the fragile myths society has created to keep itself stable and comfortable. This voice does not allow you to participate blindly. It demands clarity. It demands authenticity. But authenticity carries a heavy price. To society, your very presence becomes a subtle threat. You challenge the delicate balance of illusions that people depend upon for meaning, belonging, and happiness. Your refusal to participate in meaningless rituals or shallow pleasures unintentionally shines a spotlight on the superficiality of their lives. They sense it, consciously or unconsciously, and instinctively distance themselves from you, labeling you as difficult, uncooperative, or even arrogant. This is why your clarity, your awakening, feels like a punishment. It creates a distance between you and others, isolating you psychologically and emotionally. Yet, paradoxically, you may begin questioning your own sanity. After all, if the majority believes in these illusions, perhaps it is you who is mistaken? You wonder if perhaps ignorance is indeed bliss, and whether living authentically is worth the isolation. But deep down, you also sense this is a false trade-off. You intuitively know that your clarity isn't wrong, it's simply incompatible with social conformity. So now, you're caught in an uncomfortable psychological tension between two powerful forces: society's relentless pressure to conform and your inner need to live authentically. This psychological and philosophical conflict is not merely theoretical, it affects your daily decisions, your emotional well-being, your identity, even your self-worth. Thus, the loneliness you experience isn't accidental. It's structurally embedded in the fabric of modern life. Society, at its core, is designed to subtly discourage independent thinking and genuine authenticity. It rewards conformity with acceptance and punishes clarity with isolation. Understanding this dynamic is both liberating and terrifying because you realize your loneliness isn't a flaw, it's a direct result of your awakening. You've unknowingly initiated a rebellion against collective consciousness, and now you must bear its inevitable consequences. But this realization only marks the beginning of an even deeper darkness. Understanding the psychological and philosophical roots is crucial, yet it's merely the gateway into even more profound truths about how these invisible structures shape your entire life and the very fabric of the society around you. If you've made it this far, the journey ahead will challenge everything you thought you knew. Are you ready to discover the unseen consequences of this struggle between your clarity and society's illusions? Because once you see clearly, you can never unsee again. Most people never pause to consider that the subtle pressure to conform doesn't merely affect social dynamics, it shapes destinies, quietly guiding your choices, your emotional health, and even the trajectory of entire lives. You might think your sense of isolation is just a personal burden, a small price paid for clarity, but in truth, it's something far more insidious, profound, and invisible. It's the silent hand steering you toward a life that society prefers you lead, rather than the life your true self desires. Consider the phenomenon psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable psychological tension created when you hold beliefs that contradict social expectations. Your brain is wired to resolve this discomfort, usually by subtly altering your beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors to better align with what society considers acceptable. But here's the dark truth. Each small adjustment you make to relieve this tension, each compromise in authenticity you accept, chips away at your true identity, replacing your genuine self with a socially constructed persona. Over time, you become less able to distinguish between what you genuinely believe and what society has conditioned you to accept. Imagine it as if you were standing before a mirror, slowly applying layers of paint over your reflection. Each brushstroke represents a small concession, a tiny white lie, a forced smile, a conversation feigning interest. At first, your true face beneath the paint is still visible, but gradually, as you layer on these seemingly harmless acts of conformity, the image in the mirror becomes increasingly distorted. Eventually, you no longer recognize the person staring back at you. You've exchanged authenticity for acceptance, clarity for comfort, and the reflection you now see is not truly yours, but society's creation. But what happens beneath the surface of your mind when you surrender authenticity for the comfort of fitting in? Neuroscience provides a disturbing answer. The brain thrives on social acceptance, releasing dopamine when you achieve a sense of belonging, even if that belonging is built upon false pretenses. Your mind essentially rewards you chemically for abandoning clarity. Yet, paradoxically, deep beneath these superficial layers of contentment simmers anxiety, dissatisfaction, and depression, because your brain also craves authenticity and truth. Thus begins a lifelong tug-of-war between superficial happiness and deeper fulfillment, a battle you might not even be aware is being fought. The late cultural critic Neil Postman famously warned us about the toxic comfort of modern society when he said, "People will come to adore the technologies that undo their capacities to think." We've arrived in precisely such a moment. Social media, consumer culture, instant gratification, all designed not to enhance your clarity, but to cloud your vision, distract your mind, and keep you safely within society's predictable boundaries. The invisible consequence of these distractions isn't merely wasted time. It's the gradual atrophy of your ability to critically assess reality and challenge the illusions around you. Perhaps the most disturbing invisible consequence of all is how society's pressures reshape your definition of success and happiness, subtly conditioning you to pursue goals that align with collective ideals rather than your true values. Material success, social popularity, superficial prestige society carefully promotes these as the ultimate symbols of fulfillment. Yet, you sense their emptiness. Deep down, you know that lasting fulfillment cannot be purchased, nor can it be found in shallow interactions or fleeting social validation. Still, the invisible currents of social conditioning are powerful. Even as you recognize their superficiality, you find yourself drawn toward them, pulled by invisible strings of societal expectation. When enough individuals abandon authentic self-awareness to chase these empty rewards, society itself transforms into a hall of mirrors, reflecting illusions back at itself. The collective consciousness becomes little more than a mutually reinforced fantasy, a self-sustaining system built upon superficial values. Within this system, authenticity becomes an aberration, an anomaly the system must quickly isolate, marginalize, or eradicate. because authenticity threatens the comfortable illusion society relies upon to function. Thus, your personal struggle with clarity and isolation isn't merely an individual issue, it's emblematic of a deeper societal dysfunction. Your inability to fit neatly into society's mold is not a flaw. It's evidence that you've begun to resist the invisible mechanisms of social control. Your unease, your restlessness, your dissatisfaction, these are signals from deep within your psyche, warning you of the hidden price society demands for conformity. Now, here's the harsh reality. The longer you remain unaware of these invisible consequences, the deeper society's influence penetrates your consciousness, the more your choices will unconsciously align with society's wishes, and the further you will drift from your true self. The feeling of isolation that accompanies clarity is painful precisely because it's a form of withdrawal, like breaking free from an addictive drug. The journey is uncomfortable, unsettling, even painful, but ultimately, it's necessary. At this point, you must ask yourself, what price are you willing to pay for the illusion of comfort and belonging? How much authenticity are you willing to sacrifice in exchange for superficial approval and momentary happiness? Because once you've seen how these invisible forces shape your life and distort your identity, ignorance is no longer an option. But don't despair, not yet. Realizing how deeply society's invisible hands have guided your thoughts, beliefs, and actions is indeed unsettling. Yet, this realization itself is a powerful first step toward reclaiming your identity, your authenticity, and your clarity. The question now is, can you harness this understanding to initiate genuine change? Is there a path forward, a way to rebel against these invisible forces, reclaim your true self, and find a deeper, more authentic form of belonging? If you have the courage to keep going, the answer awaits you in the next step of your journey, a path toward true rebellion and liberation. So now you've seen clearly how deeply invisible social forces shape your thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. You understand the heavy price you've been paying for the illusion of belonging. But awareness alone isn't enough. To truly reclaim your authenticity and free yourself from these subtle chains, you must embark on a radical journey, a rebellion against society's comfortable illusions. The question is, how do you begin? The first step toward genuine liberation is understanding that rebellion doesn't necessarily mean overtly rejecting society itself, but rather consciously resisting the unconscious forces that seek to define your identity for you. True rebellion is subtle yet powerful. It begins in your mind, in the choices you make every day. It's the quiet refusal to pretend excitement for things you don't care about, the decision to speak honestly even when the truth may isolate you, and the courage to say no to social rituals that drain rather than nourish you. Consider the story of Henry David Thoreau, the American philosopher who famously declared, "Most men lead lives of quiet desperation." Thoreau chose to retreat to Walden Pond, away from society's noise and pressure, precisely to rediscover clarity and authenticity. He recognized the deep tension between authentic existence and social conformity, and he deliberately chose solitude as a path toward inner freedom. But his retreat wasn't merely about escaping. It was about confronting the truth of his own being, an act of profound rebellion against society's definitions of success and happiness. Now, you don't have to retreat into the wilderness, but you must find your own Walden Pond, your personal space, physical or psychological, where you can clearly see and reclaim your true self, free from society's demands. It might be quiet mornings spent reading books that nourish your soul rather than consuming shallow entertainment. It might be consciously choosing meaningful solitude over meaningless social interactions. It might even be a private moment each day, questioning your decisions and motivations, consciously aligning them with your deepest values rather than society's superficial standards. True rebellion involves dismantling the illusion that your self-worth depends upon external validation. Psychologist Carl Rogers emphasized the critical distinction between your authentic self and the socially constructed self, urging that true fulfillment comes from unconditional self-regard, valuing yourself irrespective of external approval. When your self-worth no longer depends on society's fleeting validation, you're free to live genuinely, fearlessly, and authentically. You might fear that choosing authenticity means perpetual isolation, but history offers comforting evidence to the contrary. Consider Albert Camus, the existential philosopher and novelist. Camus lived in perpetual tension with mainstream beliefs, openly challenging the collective illusions society created to avoid confronting existential absurdity. Yet Camus wasn't alone in his rebellion. He found connection, purpose, and even profound happiness by embracing authenticity rather than conformity. His famous assertion that the only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion isn't a call to loneliness. It's an invitation to authentic connection with others who've also dared to see clearly. Here's an essential insight to grasp. Authentic belonging emerges not from conforming, but precisely from refusing to conform. The people who resonate deeply with your true self, the ones capable of genuine connection, can only find you once you stop hiding behind society's mask. Thus, your rebellion is ultimately a pathway toward deeper, truer relationships, grounded in mutual authenticity rather than superficial conformity. Still, rebellion demands courage. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard argued passionately for the necessity of courageous individual choices against social pressures, warning that the crowd is untruth. Kierkegaard understood that living authentically means making difficult choices that society might misunderstand or reject. Yet, he insisted, this very difficulty provides the richest rewards: self-respect, authenticity, and genuine freedom. Embracing your uniqueness, choosing authenticity even when it isolates you momentarily, is not merely rebellion, it's an essential act of self-liberation. At this point, you may realize that rebellion isn't an isolated act, it's an ongoing process, a daily practice of choosing truth over comfort. It's actively deciding to resist the powerful yet invisible currents of conformity, reclaiming your right to live as a fully awake, authentic individual. And as you engage in this quiet rebellion, you may discover something profound. Your perceived isolation transforms into a powerful form of inner strength. Instead of feeling lonely, you start feeling empowered, purposeful, alive precisely, because you're no longer compromising your authenticity. In practical terms, this rebellion could manifest as small but meaningful changes in your daily life. Practicing radical honesty in conversations, consciously choosing activities aligned with your values, or quietly distancing yourself from social obligations that deplete your energy and distort your identity. Over time, these small rebellions build momentum, gradually reshaping your life from the inside out. Of course, this path won't always be comfortable or easy. Society will continue trying to pull you back into its comfortable illusions, constantly tempting you to trade authenticity for approval. But the true test of your clarity, the true rebellion, is your willingness to persist, to remain awake and authentic, despite discomfort or temporary isolation. Your reward is a life rooted in genuine freedom, authentic relationships, and lasting fulfillment. Yet, even now, there remains a deeper truth awaiting discovery. Rebellion and clarity are essential, but they're still not the final answers. Beyond rebellion lies an even more profound insight, an ultimate truth powerful enough to permanently alter your perception of yourself, your relationships, and your very existence. If you're ready, it's time to unveil this final revelation, one that will illuminate everything that came before and permanently shift your understanding of what it truly means to live authentically in a world designed for conformity. Are you prepared for this final awakening? At last, we've arrived at the deepest, most transformative insight of your journey. You've confronted society's hidden mechanisms, explored the subtle consequences of conformity, and embraced the rebellious path toward authenticity. But beneath even this rebellion lies a final truth, a revelation that illuminates the core of your struggle and changes everything you thought you knew about living authentically in a conformist world. This ultimate truth is both simple and profound. The loneliness and isolation you've felt were never the problem. They were always part of the solution. Let that sink in for a moment. Your feelings of being different, disconnected, and out of step were never symptoms of failure or inadequacy. Instead, they were signs that your mind was waking up, urgently signaling you that the life you were leading or being pressured to lead was fundamentally incompatible with your deepest values. The isolation was never punishment. It was protection, your psyche's way of preserving authenticity, even in the face of immense social pressure. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "No price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." Consider the depth of this insight. Owning your authentic self fully and unapologetically is worth any temporary loneliness, social misunderstanding, or momentary discomfort. The clarity you possess, the capacity to see beyond society's illusions, isn't a curse. It's one of the rarest and most valuable gifts you can possess. You have been granted the privilege and the burden of truly knowing yourself, of understanding the real meaning behind your existence. Yet, this revelation doesn't end at simply appreciating your individuality. There is an even deeper layer, a universal truth that transcends individual experience. When you accept your isolation and loneliness as part of authenticity, they cease to be burdens and become powerful sources of connection. This is the paradox at the heart of your journey. Once you genuinely accept yourself, embracing rather than resisting your isolation, you'll discover an unexpected sense of unity. Ironically, it is precisely through your isolation, through the courage to stand apart, that you form the deepest bonds with others. Why? Because genuine human connection can only happen between truly authentic people. Those who live behind masks cannot truly connect. They can only perform rituals of false intimacy. Your decision to stand authentically, even in isolation, attracts those who are equally awake, equally authentic, and equally courageous. The existential philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre wrote that man is condemned to be free. At first glance, it may seem pessimistic, yet there's immense power in this statement. You're not merely free to choose authenticity, you're fundamentally responsible for creating meaning in your life. Society cannot grant you meaning, it can only offer comforting illusions. True meaning is something you must actively, consciously create through authentic choices and courageous actions. In this profound freedom lies your greatest power and your ultimate liberation. Consider your entire journey thus far as a profound awakening. You began with confusion and discomfort, realizing you felt out of sync with the world around you. But now, you understand this discomfort wasn't meaningless or random. It was purposeful, a call from deep within, guiding you toward authenticity. Every moment of discomfort, every pang of loneliness, was a step towards something much greater, more meaningful, and ultimately more rewarding than temporary social acceptance. Your struggle was never futile. It was a gateway to liberation. At the deepest level, authenticity isn't merely about being honest or standing apart. It's about living a life of conscious rebellion against the superficiality and conformity that dominate modern existence. Authenticity isn't passive. It's active, dynamic, and profoundly transformative. You don't merely discover authenticity. You continuously create it, moment by moment, decision by decision. This creative act of authenticity is your most potent tool in reclaiming your life and reshaping your reality. Now, here's your final, transformative insight. You were never truly alone. You were always walking alongside every other awakened soul who dared to see beyond society's illusions. You're part of an invisible network of individuals across history and around the world, all of whom chose authenticity over conformity, clarity over comfort, truth over illusion. Your loneliness is a shared experience. Your rebellion is communal. This ultimate revelation transforms isolation into solidarity and clarity into strength. You realize now that your journey toward authenticity connects you to a larger human experience, an ongoing, timeless struggle to reclaim human dignity, truth, and meaning from the grips of social conformity and psychological manipulation. In embracing this final truth, your life inevitably changes. You become more courageous, more compassionate, more genuinely connected to others. You see clearly that superficial belonging was never real belonging at all. Authentic belonging emerges only from authenticity itself, from relationships built on honest conversations, genuine intimacy, and fearless vulnerability. You become not merely a participant in your life, but its active creator, no longer trapped by invisible forces, but liberated by conscious choice. As this revelation settles deeply within your being, you find that your perception has irreversibly changed. You can no longer see your isolation as punishment, nor clarity as a curse. Instead, you recognize them as precious gifts, the foundational truths upon which a meaningful life must be built. You understand deeply what Carl Jung meant when he wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And now, finally, you have claimed this privilege as your own. Your journey through loneliness, awakening, rebellion, and now ultimate clarity was never merely philosophical or psychological. It was deeply human, a journey that leads you back to yourself, back to others, back to life itself. You see now that your authenticity, your courageous insistence upon truth, doesn't alienate you from humanity. It connects you profoundly to it. So, embrace this final truth. The world never needed you to conform. It always needed you to awaken. Welcome home.